Sideshow Mel. Sideshow Mel. This is episode 19 of Branching Out. 19, for those out-of-province listeners, which is most of you according to the stats, is the legal drinking age in Ontario. Coincidental, maybe. Hopefully by now you figured out what we're trying to do here. We aren't here just to spread information or look to the past for inspiration, though that's not what we're doing. What we're really trying to do with Branching Out is make sure that you, dear listener, inter or extra-provincial, understand the importance of letting yourself be inspired by what you see around you and who is showing it to you. And to be honest, some of the people that we've had on the podcast so far have come up surprisingly quickly. You know how when you throw a party, you don't actually expect everybody that you've invited to show up? Well, for Branching Out, almost everybody has showed up, and we're super appreciative. With Toronto Cocktail Conference coming up, we at Bartender Atlas are truthfully a little crushed right now. Toronto Cocktail Conference is taking place on August 10th and 11th at the Drake Hotel, and tickets are on sale now. It's 2 days of seminars and tastings and some side quests and friends bars doing stuff. It'll be fun. We'll have a small handful of little pods in the meantime to keep you going with Branching Out. So don't unsubscribe. In fact, tell everyone you know to subscribe. For today's episode, though, I want to tell you about one of the starting points for Branching Out. At 50 Best Bars in Vancouver in 2025, I was leaving one of the side quests that were planned throughout the week, and I heard a familiar voice say, "Hey man, killer shirt." "Hey, thanks," I answered instinctively because I was wearing a Public Enemy shirt, and Public Enemy are the best. Only then did my eyes meet with the complimenter. It was Chris Hanna from Jewel of the South, but more importantly, from New Orleans. If you're listening to this podcast, you know who Chris Hanna is. And if not, you at least know how important New Orleans, the city, is to cocktails and drinking culture, right? Right? At that moment, while trying to conceive of what the next Bartender Atlas audio documentary/podcast might be, I thought, what about a Mount Rushmore of bartenders? A quick Google is all it takes to figure out that Mount Rushmore is even more problematic than you might think it is, but it still feels like a good starting point. And for Branching Out, that's kind of the way that I went about it. Who are 4 of my favorite bartenders? Sometimes it's a writer, sometimes it's a former coworker, sometimes it isn't even a hospitality pro at all. So for the first 18 or so episodes, it's become obvious that there are so many different relationships that become mentorships or, at least inspiration or pillars, however you want to phrase it. I'm Josh LIndley, and this is Branching Out. The first name I think of when I think of my biggest influences is Charlotte Voisey. In the early 2010s, when my quest for all the cocktail and spirits knowledge in the world was at its peak, Charlotte Voisey was one of the faces you could see online talking about all the things that I wanted to know. What made Charlotte stand out was that in those videos, she had a very matter-of-fact delivery that conveyed expertise without ever seeming like she was talking down to the viewer. She never talked down to you, or me, or whoever was watching some liquor.com video in 2011 or whatever. She always sounded excited to be sharing what she knew, and that, as much as what she was sharing, really impressed upon me. Years later, I worked as the Canadian brand ambassador for Hendrick's Gin. This made Charlotte, in a way, my boss. So, for this episode, I am the starting branch, and I'm talking to one of my biggest influences, Charlotte Voisey, director of Tales of the Cocktail, on Branching Out. Hi there, Charlotte Voisey. Thanks for coming on Branching Out. I didn't ask you to send me a bio, so can you tell people who you are and what you do?
Oh, sure. Hi, Josh. Thank you so much for having me on. My name is Charlotte Voisey. I'm currently the Executive Director of the Tales of the Cocktail Foundation. If you're a bartender, you may have heard of it. We're based in New Orleans. I'm based in New York. Enjoying the role, a lot of virtual meetings, a lot of traveling around, meeting up with different bartenders all over the country and the world. And then prior to that, I was famously head of ambassadors for William Grant & Sons for a very long time.
Charlotte, very important first question, really laying groundwork. Can you tell me about when and where you learned to play the tuba?
Yes, of course. Let's get the important things established first. So it was the first year in high school, and my last name begins with V, which means I was often at the very back of the class, right? The last to get asked to do anything. So in alphabetical order, each girl in my class, I went to an all-girls school, was asked which musical instrument they would like to learn because we all had to pick something. And invariably, everybody picked the violin or the flute or something quite common. And then when it got to me, I thought, I've had enough of this, so I'm going to pick something outrageous so everyone turns around and looks at me. So I picked the tuba because I was feeling obnoxious, but I stuck to it. And I played the tuba in school classically for the next sort of 8 years, joined the local youth orchestra and actually performed at the Royal Albert Hall, which is a very prestigious venue in London. So I stuck to my guns, even though it started as a bit of a joke.
Well, I mean, it also feels like an amazing party trick.
Yes.
I don't know if anyone's ever asked you about your tuba playing in any interview I've heard with you before. So anytime it does happen, and I've seen it twice, I think, the look on everyone's face in a room is outstanding.
Yeah, I pulled it out literally as a party trick at Tales of the Cocktail one year for our party, and people could not believe what they were seeing or hearing.
Do you have a tuba currently?
I do. It lives with me here in New York.
Amazing. And so you still get to play?
I do. I actually play Tuba Christmas each year. I know we're spending more time talking about the tuba than you might have thought. But every year, Tuba Christmas, they have an event in each state in the US and internationally. And I do the one at Rockefeller Center here in New York City. It's iconic and it's a lovely way to celebrate the Christmas holiday season.
I think it's important that everyone knows that despite how much time and effort you put into being your professional self as Charlotte Voisey, that you have outlets like easily the funniest musical instrument.
I do.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about bartending on this Bartender podcast. Can you tell us a bit about the first few bars that you worked in and what kind of training was involved specifically?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I started in the industry with a company. It was actually part of my university degree. I studied international tourism management, which tracks. And the reason I chose the course I did is that it had a mandatory year in industry. So I joined a company based in London, and it was a restaurant management training program that lasts for 6 months. So I actually kind of came into the industry at the top and worked my way, I won't say down, I worked my way through. I had an intensive 6-month training program in London at a very famous restaurant in Knightsbridge, which taught me every aspect of running a restaurant, including bartending, which at the time I just sort of took as part of my training. But then the second 6 months of that year, I moved to Barcelona and ran one of their bars and focused a lot more on cocktails. Now, when I say cocktails, this was the very late 1990s. So the cocktails I was making then are not necessarily the same as the craft cocktails we get to enjoy these days, but they were nonetheless cocktails, and it was sort of high volume bartending. From there, that company then took me to Argentina and then back to London. By this time, it's the early 2000s, and cocktails were being taken seriously. And I trained with a company called Gorgeous Group in London, who had worked with some of the best bars and bartenders in London at the time, which was, I think it's fair to say, the leading city for cocktail culture in the early 2000s. So I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by great education and training, but also mentorship, which, as you know well, Josh, is a really big part of how you grow and develop as a bartender.
Mm-hmm. I love the way that you phrase that, where bartending was just part of working through what your degree ended up being and has ended up being something very much a tentpole for you.
Yes, exactly. It wasn't necessarily the plan, but often when you allow yourself to have these experiences, what you enjoy and are good at naturally kind of floats towards the fore, coupled with the opportunity that our industry has presented folks with recently, which is more and more pathways in careers in our industry, specifically on the beverage side.
And speaking of careers, going from this degree and traveling Buenos Aires and Barcelona, which the last time you and I were in the same room, I had asked about Barcelona versus Buenos Aires, and you were like, yeah, it's cool. I speak 2 Spanishes. But yeah, go ahead.
I didn't intend to. I was very proud of myself for picking up Spanish so quickly out of necessity. When I got to Barcelona, again, it was a different kind of era. No one had phones. I had to learn the language to survive and thrive. Nobody really spoke English to me around in the community I was in. So I was very proud of myself for learning Spanish. So when I then went to Argentina, and I was like, well, at least I don't have to worry about the language. And then the very first conversation I had, I was like, what language are you speaking? It's very different. So I jumped back on the learning wagon, and that, yes, they're two quite different languages.
Yeah, as a Canadian that sort of speaks Quebecois French, I get the same thing whenever I go to Paris.
Can imagine, right?
Yeah, but of all the different new pathways that are coming out, going back 19, 20-ish years ago, how did the brand ambassador job, it was Hendrick's Gin initially and then William Grant & Sons eventually, right? How did that come about?
Yeah, so I was running the bar in London at the time. It was around 2006. And William Grant & Sons were one of my great suppliers, had good relationships with, as many others. But there was a gentleman there who was called Mackie, who came up to me, and he, we'd known each other for a little while. And he said, I want you to come and work for us, William Grant, with Hendrick's in the US. And ultimately, he distilled the opportunity down to, we need to connect our brands with the bartender community. We're launching Hendrick's in the US, and it's a brand that deserves to be built by bartenders, and we want you to be that connection. That was still to this day, I think, the most articulate distillation of the role of the brand ambassador. And it's a line that I held on to throughout my career with Hendrick's and William Grant & Sons. And that's essentially what I did. I moved to New York, became the first Hendrick's ambassador here, and I was the connection from the day one till the last day for Hendrick's to the bartender community. And that's how I saw the role of brand ambassador.
It's funny because at that time, did you grasp what brand ambassador was? That distillation is great as a couple sentence to explain it or as a thesis statement. But even going into the job, like what percentage of the job did you expect versus what you were actually confronted with?
Yeah, that's a great question, because 20 years ago, the landscape of being a brand ambassador was very different to what it is now. There weren't as many, for starters. I was very lucky in that I had a role model. I use that word carefully, but I think it's okay to use, in Simon Ford. He was showing what it is to represent a brand and connect with bartenders in a really great way. So I had him to kind of watch and learn from, and I learned a tremendous amount from him, and he introduced me to a lot of people. I think early on I realized that the secret to being a great brand ambassador is to be yourself and do it your way. So while I respected Simon's path and looked up to him, I also found my own way to do things. So he and I think, did the role in a very different way.
I think that's a fair assessment.
But no, I guess I didn't really know what I was getting into, but I also don't really think the industry knew what it needed from the idea of a brand ambassador. I think it was masses of opportunity. It was carte blanche. It was, again, like the North Star was set. How you got there was up to me, up to Simon, up to Claire Warner, up to the few great names of that era that sort of started this role.
Yeah, you sort of got to write what the position ended up looking like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And hopefully we did a good job for those that are brand ambassadors these days.
How long did you feel it took being in that position before you were at ease with it? Did you immediately say, like, with your full chest, I'm Hendrick's Gin? Or did it take a minute to sort of figure out that you felt good being I'm Hendrick's Gin?
Yeah, that's an important question too. I think I did all of that before I accepted the role. When you're a bartender, as you know, Josh, and you've had a similar journey up to the stage as I have. When you're a bartender, you get to work with all brands, all spirits, and you enjoy that for the most part. Sure, you might have your favorite spirit categories and your preferred brands, but one of the wonders of being a bartender is you get creative with all sorts of different things. And the idea of honing that all down to not only one category, but one particular brand, all of a sudden you sort of think, wow, that feels a bit claustrophobic. And will I be trapped? And what about the other relationships that I have? And I enjoy working with cognac or Tanqueray or whatever it is. And all of a sudden the idea that all goes away takes a little bit of getting used to. So when I was first offered the role, I sat with it for probably about 2 months, having those discussions with myself, until one day I kind of woke up and was very clear that this was a great opportunity with a company I respected and a brand that I loved and felt that I connected with. So when I said yes, then I was all in.
Yeah. Did you find there was parts of your bartender training that you could bring with you, that you, instead of having to exclude things that you'd learned as a bartender that you have brought with you as a brand ambassador?
Oh, yes. I would hope to say all of it, most of it. Absolutely. Being a great brand ambassador is understanding where your brand fits in, not only to the category, but the broader landscape of being a bartender of the spirits industry as a whole. Whenever I was doing sort of bartender trainings and would then later mentor other ambassadors, you have to remember that if for us there's only one gin, for a bartender, that's never going to be the case. Now, they can love Hendrix and they can maybe love Hendrix the most, but they're never going to only work just with Hendrix. So let's respect that and bring in tools and suggestions and education that can inspire them to be the best bartender they can. And that's not only when they're making a cocktail with my brand, but it's in all scenarios. So yes, I think understanding the scope of what it is to be a bartender, I leaned on a lot of that during my time as an ambassador, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Another thing with the timing of you becoming a brand ambassador is social media and YouTube really started to assert themselves into society, really. So how did you have to shift your methods of engagement? And beyond that, did the higher-ups who were maybe prescribing what you were supposed to be doing understand how you had to make those shifts?
Yeah, these are very insightful questions, Josh. It had a massive role because, as we liked to joke earlier, now it just makes us look old. Like, we were ambassadors before Facebook, but it was the case. And I think a lot of that relationship building in person, one-on-one, the industry was a lot smaller back then, so it was a lot easier to do. That all gave me certainly a lovely foundation because I feel like I made real friendships and connections that are perhaps easier to do in person, longer lasting. With social media, obviously, it opened the door to many opportunities to connect with people in a different way that you never could before. As much as we tried to be everywhere all at once, there are some constraints on that idea. So all of a sudden, we could see what bartenders on the other side of the world were doing and have conversations with them and support them and ask questions. So it opened up many opportunities. But then with that, over time, kicked in the expectation that if you've got relationships with all these bartenders in the city you live in, you should now be able to have relationships with bartenders everywhere, right? And it doesn't work in the same way. Or if you're trying to communicate with people on a larger level, a larger scale, the nature of your communication has to change. So your communication skills have to kind of adapt. And I think really the biggest challenge came with COVID, right? Mm-hmm. And that was then, 16 years into my tenure as an ambassador, or 15 years. And all of a sudden, when the world shut down, social media was our window to the world. It was our means of communication. And I'm really proud of the job that our ambassador team did to stay connected to bartenders, not just in a communication way, but continue in the education, continue in the support and inspiration that a good ambassador team can do. But with that came massive expectations from the company that almost an ambassador would then naturally become an influencer of a reasonable scale. And as you probably know, and many people out there, you don't just become an influencer of scale overnight. That takes a lot of work, hours, skill, talent, understanding. It's a completely different profession, and it doesn't happen overnight. So it's definitely a journey, but it's a very good question.
Yeah. Coming back to a hands-on, face-to-face world, some of the things that you've produced as when you were working with William Grant & Sons, the activations that you would put together were just wild. Being presented a martini that jumped out of a plant wall, or I feel like there was a drink being poured all the way down a periscope at one event. Is there any specific activation or event that sticks out to you where you're like, yes, I did that? Or conversely, if we want to go this way, something that went horribly wrong that you just wish you could erase from memory?
No, let's take the first route.
Okay.
The best thing we've ever done, and I have to give credit to Jim Ryan, my colleague at the time, who you know, Josh, was when we did the freshest Ramos Gin Fizz in the world at Tales of the Cocktail 20 10, I think it was, at the World War II Museum. And it was a time when fresh ingredients were important. And so we thought, well, let's take this to the extreme and we'll make New Orleans' signature cocktail, the Ramos Gin Fizz, outside. So if every ingredient had to be the freshest possible, right, we flew a batch of gin over that had been distilled as recently as possible from Scotland. We had sugarcane that we were juicing to make the simple syrup, somehow making orange flower water there and then, obviously juicing fresh lemons and limes. But the star of the show was the cow that we had that was milked for the cream to make the Ramos Gin Fizz. And to this day, it's the coolest thing I think we've ever done, and the most talked about and the most ridiculous, and also the least expensive, amazing trick we've ever pulled off at a trade activation like that.
I remember that. The amount of selfies that I saw of people with that cow. Do we know the cow's name?
No.
No, at no point.
No.
Anyway, amazing contribution.
Yes, exactly. Well, there's been many moments, but that one will forever hold the mantle.
Yeah. One thing that's important for listeners to know is that as a brand person, maybe scare quotes on brand person, while your events were stunning, what makes you stick out, in my mind, was your dedication to not just having a cow on site for the freshest Ramos Gin Fizz possible, but really the dedication to spirits and bar education, along with all the wild, fun martini jumping out of a bush. Growing up, did you ever want to be a teacher?
Ooh, I don't think so. When I was little, I wanted to travel and be famous.
Right.
I never really
Good
thought
news.
beyond how I would do that or why. But I think now reflecting, and obviously hindsight's a great thing. My sister is an academic. She's insanely smart. Went to Cambridge, had a PhD in Cambridge. So she was always the clever one in our family. And somewhere along the way, I think I enjoyed the ability to break things down simply so that anybody could understand them. I went to a grammar school. I went to a very good school. But again, everyone around me, I always considered was smarter than me. So the way I got through my education was trying to make things simple to understand. And as I did that for myself, I realized, when you can explain something for anyone to understand, you actually understand it better yourself, because you have to translate it all for yourself and then make it simple. So looking back, I think I always enjoyed that part of explaining. So maybe that led me into being a natural at education or teaching, explaining things for others, maybe.
That's funny because I had another question here to ask about how you've come about the way that you present information has, to me, always felt like you are confident in presenting it, but you're never talking down to whoever you're presenting it to. And a lot of times, we know this, spirit nerds, there's a difference between a geek and a snob, and sometimes that line gets crossed too easily. And I feel that the way that you present things has always been very relatable. And so you explained that very well, even though I didn't need to ask the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So almost 3 years ago, you changed jobs. Not to say that you didn't move through positions at William Grant & Sons, but you changed jobs drastically for the first time in 18, 19 years. You left William Grant & Sons and you became, what's the director of Tales of the Cocktail? With your years of experience working with Tales as a sponsor, was it a difficult transition into the job, or did you just kind of slide into place? You kind of understood it before you even got there?
It wasn't a difficult decision to make, to take the role. As soon as I heard about it, something inside me was like, oh, this would be wonderful. I've always had a lot of respect and gratitude for what Tales of the Cocktail has done over the years for my career and for many others. And I knew that with the combination of that attitude plus my experience working not only with Tales, but other events and bartender communities around the US specifically and a little international, that I would be able to contribute. I knew that I would. And at the same time, it was, after 18 years, finally an opportunity for a new challenge for me, right? I adored the work I did with William Grant & Sons and greatly loved my position, but we all need change and challenge. So here was an opportunity for me to not leave the industry that I loved, bring all the experience I had and knew that it would make a positive impact and contribution, yet still be challenged and learn something new. Going from corporate to nonprofit, regardless of industry, is a massive change and challenge and transition that I was looking forward to. So it wasn't a hard decision to make, but it was a massive learning curve, certainly in the first year. And still, I learned a lot about myself in the first year. I learned a lot about Tails, obviously. I learned more about the industry. While I had been always well connected in the industry, everything was focused through William Grant & Sons. Now I have the opportunity to see how other big and small brands operate and their different approaches. And there's more diversity in what I'm exposed to, and that's a massive learning opportunity for me.
Has there been any moments of discomfort dealing with some of the former competitors? Competitors feels like the wrong word for that. But anyone who also works with Tales of the Cocktail, but maybe would throw parties on the same night as William Grant & Sons used to? Or has there been anything like that? Or do you generally get along with everyone?
Yeah, I mean, there's no big scandal to kind of report on here. I'm definitely hyper aware of it. I think I would worry in the early days how other brands and companies might receive me and how much they would be willing to share, not because they didn't trust me, but just because for so long I've been so synonymous with that company and those brands. And I've also been very aware that just because I stopped working for William Grant & Sons, the connection I have to those brands and the sort of ownership and relationship I have with those brands, it takes a long time to fully disconnect. And I still work with them, right? William Grant & Sons is still a big part of Tales. I still have friends that work there, and I have a new relationship with that company, but it's still a very positive one. So it was definitely something I was hyper aware of. There haven't really been any big moments, but definitely sort of, I remember like walking into the head offices of the likes of Campari or Pernod Ricard for the first time. Definitely something inside me sort of said, should I be here? But then it's a new day, so it's all good.
I like that it's a self-awareness rather than something that's come at you from externally. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. The year 2026 saw the return of Tales on Tour.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about why you, as director, wanted to bring this program back?
Yeah, for sure. It's something that the team had been wanting to do for a while. And I think with me joining the team, we had extra bandwidth to finally make it happen. I had been a big part of Tales on Tour when it first started, way back in 2011, Vancouver, as you'll remember, was our first stop. And I saw firsthand the excitement that Vancouver, then later Buenos Aires, Mexico City, Edinburgh, and Puerto Rico, with which they received Tales on Tour and were able to reciprocate and share what those different cocktail cities were able to do. And the world was better for it, right? The global bar community was better for it. So we saw an opportunity to do that here in the US to start with. So Chicago, Dallas, LA, DC, and Miami are our 5 cities for the US. We've done the first 3 already, and we'll pick up on the tour after Tales of the Cocktail. But it's been great to see that our intention of bringing Tales to more bartenders in more places has had the impact that we wanted it to. We've been able to dial in the education and the programming to be more locally focused, literally asking those communities ahead of time, what do you want? Like, what do you want to see? How involved would you like to be? Are there certain topics of education that you would like to see presented? And really getting them involved. And then I think the next chapter is making sure we can dial that up to ensure that when we pick where we're going to go, what's the broader catchment area so that we can affect the secondary markets and the tertiary markets away from the same places that brands invest in all of the time. That's really behind this program, to make a big impact in smaller markets.
Amazing. Thank you. I think it's really great. When I saw that you were doing that again, I got very excited about it. I think it's an excellent way, to focus on cities that don't necessarily get the love that maybe they deserve, or just everyone deserves love.
Yeah. That's
I think it's great. Okay, we've been talking for almost a half hour already, but on to the supposed statement of branching out. Charlotte, can we talk about some of your bigger influences? I know you already mentioned Simon Ford, but in and amongst your career, who are some of the mentors or tent poles pillars in your career so far?
Yeah, I'll kind of go back towards the beginning, and the first big competition I ever did in London was the International Female Bartender Championships. I don't know if that even still exists anymore, but it was IBA rules, so International Bartender Association rules, which some people may or may not have heard of, but it's sort of the very old-fashioned way to bartend with very strict rules and regulations.
I remember there being deductions when there was spills on your bar mat.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But not to poo-poo on that at all. It's a wonderful structure to learn. And it makes you a very sort of tidy bartender. Anyhow, my mentor for that particular process was Salvatore Calabresi. So he was wonderful. I really enjoyed his coaching because he is obviously a fantastic bartender, very stylish, and understood those rules. That's kind of how he grew up bartending. So he was able to coach me through that. And he lent me his cocktail shaker to take to Italy for the finals, which I was like, great, no, I'm really nervous because I don't want to break them or lose them or drop them or anything. But he inspires me to this day for his personality, right? His approach. He so deeply cares about hospitality and people. And he's such a joyful character to enjoy. And he's just somehow so confident without being obnoxious. He's lovely and cares about this industry so much. So I've always enjoyed Salvatore. And then I think, again, when I first moved to the US, Julie Reiner was someone who instantly became a very dear friend, but also not to lose sight of her mentorship to me. She was someone I could always ask advice of, and she's been very generous to me with her opinions and support and encouragement. And again, she's a great role model for being herself and the way she handles herself. Her honesty and her loyalty and her support of this industry is really inspirational to me. So I would definitely add Julie there to that list as well.
If you were going to ask Salvatore anything, what would you ask him?
Oh, I feel like I've had a lot of time with Salvatore.
Have you two ever worked behind the same bar, like at any span of time, or just for events?
No, just for events or maybe photo ops is probably a more honest answer these days. No, never worked alongside him. I would perhaps want to pick his brain on how he mentors his younger bartenders coming through. Yeah, or I might need to think about that question for a little bit.
Yeah, I might hit you back. I'll text you and ask you. Is there anyone else that immediately pops out at you as thinking you saw somebody working or you worked with someone and you wanted to adopt aspects of how they go about themselves?
I think another person that has stood out to me is Tracy Franklin. So she joined the William Grant Sons team as a Glenfiddich ambassador. I forget the actual year, but around 2016 or 17. So I was working alongside her, and Tracy came in and took an already coveted, well-performing team to the whole next level with her dynamic presence, impeccable presentation skills, again, joy in how she spoke and how she communicated about spirits in general and cocktails. Since then, Tracy has been probably the foremost educator in the whiskey space, here in the US at least. And she just blows my mind and inspires me to continually try to improve. You know, we were sort of not cruising, but we were doing a great job and everyone was very good at what they did. And Tracy was one of the few people that came in and showed us how to do it even better. So she's someone that is very inspirational to me and has made me want to develop my skills further and be better.
It's always great, the value of fresh eyes.
Yeah.
Right? If you wanted to ask Tracy anything, what would you ask her?
I would ask Tracy how she prepares before she goes on stage. I know that Tracy has a theatrical background as well. So it's probably the case that it looks like it all comes very naturally to Tracy, and maybe she doesn't prepare and it's literally all talent. But I'm guessing that through her experience, both on stage and as an educator, she probably has some tips or methods that helps make her as good as she can be when she is on stage. And those are things I would love to learn, because I think those are things that we can all learn from and be better at. everyone sort of has their own way of dealing, whether it's butterflies or nerves or just getting your head straight. I kind of know what I do, but I don't know that I could articulate it or write it out as a manifesto. So that's what I would ask Tracy, because she always seems so flawless.
Yeah, the best advice always was push-ups for me. Everyone I ever talk to, if you're nervous, do 10 before a cocktail competition, do 10 push-ups. You got to go do a panel, do 10 push-ups. You get out there and your blood is already pumping, so you're about as, I don't know if it's a fight or flight thing or what it is, but yeah, that's a great idea though, is finding out people's routines before they have to go deliver a speech.
Yeah, because I think they're out there, you know?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Is there anyone else you want to talk about specifically? There's no pressure here.
I mean, there's been a lot of people that have helped and inspired me along the way. My parents, of course, not related to our work, but just in general. I've been extremely lucky to have a wonderful upbringing and just very supportive. My dad's one of those, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, kind of fun, entertaining characters. And my mom is very smart and diligent and patient and loyal. And I think the combination of them have just given me such a wonderful foundation. And always remember being told, like, there's nothing I can't do. I had tremendous confidence growing up. And I now realize that not everybody does have that. At the time, it just, everything feels normal, right? But growing up, I truly realized the value of that. So definitely give them a shout out.
That's a very heartwarming answer. I'm going to get out of the interview on that one. That's very sweet of you. Is there anything that you want to promote right now? Or if someone's looking for you, how do they find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, Charlotte HDO Voisey. But more excitingly, Tales of the Cocktail is coming up in July. So we are on sale with tickets. Everybody's welcome. It's the largest gathering of bartenders and cocktail professionals anywhere in the world, which makes it just a wonderful melting pot of people and places. So we'd love to see everybody down at Tales this year.
Amazing. Charlotte, thank you so much for taking the time to talk today. I will talk to you soon, and be well.
Thank you so much, Josh. Thanks for having me.
That was a deep one. Maybe also a great example of why, for most of Branching Out, I leave the questions to prior guests. Was it too much? Was it not enough? Let us know. And as Charlotte said, Tales of the Cocktail and Tales on Tour dates are coming up soon. If you're already in the US or want to go visit, those events are definitely worth taking in. As you heard, you never know what you'll see. If you feel like visiting Toronto as well, or instead, tickets for Toronto Cocktail Conference are on sale now. Talk takes place August 10th and 11th at the Drake Hotel here in Toronto. There's 12 seminars. There's a whole bunch of brands. There's some side quests. Come hang out. Take a look at everything we do on bartenderatlas.com. And if you're a bartender and haven't signed up yet, get it together, bozo. The next few episodes that you hear of Branching Out will be a little bit different, and they won't be coming out as frequently. Most podcasts take a summer break, so we're going to dial it back, but just a little bit. We'll be back with full episodes in September. Branching Out is made at Action Pact Studios in Toronto, written by me, Josh Lindley. Additional research by Charlotte Cassinell, production by Jesse Colburn and Aaron Verdonk. The music is all by Aaron Verdonk, and I'll talk to you soon.